when has introducing time travel to anything made things good?
Doctor
Like
Who.
there was something
Chrono
established beforehand that didn't have time travel. No, but so that would be like going back to a Chrono Trigger that didn't have time
Oh, I see
travel
what
and
you're
then
saying.
adding
I
it in
got you.
afterwards. Like
So Chrono
when
Cross.
it's like taking something existing and then being like, let's add time travel, that's never been good.
Final Fantasy
like,
13
that's
too.
just-
Hey, Final Fantasy 13 2 is actually a good game.
I
It's
love that game.
It's
so
the better
much
one.
better than.
Yeah.
It's the best of the three.
But yeah.
Great.
Hey, Cal, what's your opinion of Final Fantasy VII Remake?
It's bad. I mean, honestly, can I hunt for things that I did enjoy? Yeah, I could probably do that. But I mean, to me, it just even taking out my whole thing that everyone knows me for, and that's that I was never the biggest fan of Final Fantasy VII Original in the first place. It just, the combat was clunky, the side quests were clunky, the NPCs were clunky. They were ripped straight out of Final Fantasy 15, and about the only thing I can say is the music was good, but as we mentioned, it's mostly remixes of pre-existing work, so very little new in that way. The voice acting is good, but this is 2020. Like, most voice acting for a AAA game is going to be good these days, honestly. The Dementor things, the Arbiters, were a great idea in practice, implemented very poorly. I get what they were going for. I get that they were supposed to be agents of keeping the original storyline in place and blah blah blah, but man, they look dumb. And yeah, that's my see. When you're talking about wording your reviews of Final Fantasy, Jay's was nice and measured, as you said. Mine would have been, this game is terrible, I don't like it. The end. That's my review.
Cal, you can say something is terrible and still have a measured review. It's all about how you say it and like why you believe what you do without. My belief with reviews as a reviewer, previously as a critic, is that it's okay to be as critical as you want as long as you don't make it personal. Again, don't like attack the developers or the publishers or the artists or anything like that. Just criticize the work. Jay was back up there for a second, so I'm wondering if he's.
It had Jesse.
Yeah.
Jesse was the best part. There.
I put my Sephiroth eyes in. I don't know if you can see it. I'm gonna have to bring this up.
I actually can.
Oh, yeah.
That is slightly terrifying. That is kind of cool. Holy crap. Pity you didn't get the whole cosplay. You don't have any black trench coats lying around? Uh-oh.
No.
I'll have to give you one of mine. I actually have a jacket. This is very unprofessional of me, but I'm going to just walk off the screen for a moment. Keep talking about the game.
Sure. Yeah, so like Final Fantasy VII Remake for me was, I don't know, just kind of bad. Like, and I mean bad for me. And the weird thing about it is I was a fan of the original Final Fantasy VII. It was never my favorite Final Fantasy, but I was more so, I'm one of like the only people that I can think of, that I know of, that likes all, and I mean all of the extended universe Final Fantasy VII stuff. So I like Advent Children, and I really like Crisis Core, and I like Dirge of Cerberus. And a lot of people can say they like one of those games, mostly Crisis Core, but they don't, the movie was kind of crappy and Dirge of Cerberus was clunky and whatever else. I like all that stuff. So I considered myself to be like the market for Final Fantasy VII Remake, right? Because if you're going to change things up, I am on board for that based on all of the extended universe stuff that you guys have done. So I was like ready to love it. And all through development, there were like little warning signs for me. Oh, another delay. Oh, we haven't heard anything in like a year. Oh, it is Nomura after all. Like we didn't even find out it was a multi-part series for like 6 months after it released.
Delays in
like,
Final
okay,
Fantasy are a feature, not a problem.
So there were always warning signs, right? But when they said, like, oh, we're going to split into parts, I thought, okay, well, that's fine. There are 3 discs. Maybe it won't be like exactly a disc to a game because the 3rd disc is much shorter than the other 2. But, there are logical ending points if you were going to make 3 parts, because we actually don't know how many parts it's going to be. But I thought, okay, 3 parts, that makes sense. There are logical endpoints to do that, to end a game twice and then finish with a third. And then they were like Midgar only. And I thought, that doesn't seem like enough. And then I saw them reveal the combat for the first time. I'm like, oh, they actually didn't fuck it up, because I thought they were going to. And like, oh, it's going to be some terrible, like weird Kingdom Hearts, Final Fantasy 15 hybrid system that's just not going to be good. But I saw it. When I first saw it, I thought, this actually looks really cool. They actually didn't get rid of ATB. And then I played it for the first time when I got a demo thing, and I came away from that thoroughly underwhelmed with that combat system. And so there was always that warning sign there. So like, oh, okay, I can deal with this combat. I'm not going to love it, but I can deal with it as long as the rest of the game's great. I was always ready. I had made a thumbnail and started writing a review before I got the review code that was like, because most of my coverage pre-release, I have to admit, was critical. It was like, why hasn't it been news? Are we seriously delaying this again? And there was a very critical video of Tetsuya Nomura. But I was ready to be like, I was wrong. Like, I basically started drafting a script that at least the intro of that video of my review was going to be, I was wrong, they hit it out of the park. So I was 220% ready for this game to blow me away, and it did not. It just thoroughly disappointed me in almost every single way.
How much of that do you think may be based on your own personal attachment to the original game? And I'd like to ask this to both of you.
I don't love the original game that much. I like the extended universe.
Oh yeah, you did mention you enjoyed that, and that's a controversial opinion. I don't think I've ever met someone who admitted that they liked Dirge of Cerberus. And FYI,
I had a pet dog and I named it Shelk.
Dude, I dressed up as Vincent Valentine. In my younger days, I was basically like a visual twin of him. I had the bandana, I had the clothes, I worshipped the ground that character walked on. Still could not enjoy Dirge of Cerberus. Like that game is rough.
Well, yeah. So the gameplay wise, it's a little iffy. Like, because it's a weird third person shooter thing with sticks. Yeah, that's fine. But man, I loved the characters. I like even just the names of them, like the way that they were named with like a subtitle. Like, is it Vice the Immaculate? And
yeah,
somebody the Azure, and it was just the Azure. Yeah, it was amazing. I loved the characters. I loved the look of the game. I enjoyed the story enough. So yeah, I like Crisis Core more than I like the original Final Fantasy VII.
If that game came out now, Dirge of Cerberus, the entire comment section on YouTube would be just hundreds of people calling Vincent Valentine a simp. Yeah. Basically, they completely, in my opinion, they ruined his character, because literally all he does is worship the ground that Lucrezia walks on, but does absolutely nothing to like help her or protect her or say. I had this rant on my community question show. Someone was like, what character would you date? And they suggested Vincent Valentine for me. And I said no, because if you think about it, it's all Vincent's fault that Sephiroth even exists. Because he just sat around and let Hojo do all the bad shit and didn't help Lucrezia. And thanks to her, she got impregnated with the most evil man in the galaxy. And it's all his fault. And that story only made it worse, in my opinion. I wanted to show off this jacket. If you can see this, I don't know how well you can see this here. I've had this for a very long time. If only Kel had dressed up in something, we could basically be the 3 remnants of Sephiroth.
See, and that's another thing. I love Kadaj and the other two. It's Yazoo and I can't remember, in Advent Children. See, yeah. I love all that extended universe stuff. I like the extended universe more than I like the original Final Fantasy VII. So it's weird when, like, you only hate all the changes in Final Fantasy VII Remake because you liked the original so much. Like, no, if I had to pick, it would be like if I had to pick a list, it would be like Crisis Core, Advent Children, then Final Fantasy VII, then Dirge of Cerberus, like in that order. So like it's not even my favorite within its own universe. I don't have that much love for the original Final Fantasy VII. So that's why I considered myself like I was like the poster child fan for this Final Fantasy VII remake where you're going to make changes. I just did not like most of the changes that they happened to make this time round.
The remake actually emphasizes more of the compilation stuff. It has numerous characters and elements that are connected.
But basically little Easter eggs for the most part. And that was really weird because
I don't know, I kind of feel like they're trying to position it so that while it's like that it's more connected to the stuff that came before than the original 7 was. Like it even mentioned the other splinter factions of Avalanche, which wasn't an element in the main game but became an element in the expanded universe. And it makes me wonder if we might see freaking Zirconian weapon and some of the other obscure Turks that featured in Crisis Core or any of those people, and maybe actually expand on that. Like the way Zack died in FF7 Remake is copy paste the cutscene from Crisis Core, except we all know it kind of ends a little differently.
Yeah, I see like there'll be more inclusion of the extended universe going forward. But as far as it was just basically little mentions, as you say. Like it wasn't really a huge inclusion. I
feel like they're going to expand on that more in the next game.
Oh yeah, of course.
They have to.
I also feel like
pad out. Like the whole padding of Midgar was so poorly done. If anyone's going to criticize them for stuff, it has to be for going through the same sections multiple times, doing a side quest to turn the side quest in to get another side quest to go back to the same spot that you just came back from to go through it again. Like they tried so hard.
The exact same side quest.
Or the exact
Find the kids. Yeah. Find the kids again.
Find another kid. That
was my main complaint.
I was streaming this game live when I got to that part, and of course the NPCs in that area are also really bad. Like they barely move. They don't even look alive half the time. They just kind of stand there, and they're ripped out of Final Fantasy 15 because they use the same NPC platform. So I'm sitting there streaming this going, guys, this is really bad. And of course you have split chat of half going, yeah, it's really bad, and half going, I didn't think it was that bad.
Let's not even get started on the missing textures.
Oh, well, yeah, and that was really bad too.
I see that, and that I hate that because you point out actual empirical, valid, totally
objectively true
faults
statements,
with the game, but then people are still like, oh no, that's just because it's pushing the PlayStation 4 to its limits. I'm like, there are games that look better than this.
Way better.
Well, then why doesn't Red Dead Redemption 2 have a shitload of missing textures? Like
that square mug in Cloud's shop is totally overpowering my PS4. That's actually probably one of the few games that didn't make my PS4 Pro sound like it was about to take off into the stratosphere, now that I think about it.
Yeah, it wasn't so bad. There were just parts where in that game where I thought, when you're ascending, you're climbing the ruins to the top plate.
That was bad.
And there are all these amazing vistas. Well, they would have been amazing if they weren't, I don't know,
loaded.
They were
JPEGs.
Yeah. I mean, they weren't some terrible 600 by 900 resolution JPEG stretched to the screen. It just
definitely tell where development time went in because the chapter with Golden Saucer all looked amazing. Yeah. All looked amazing.
That was the perfect chapter.
I mean, that was the only part of the game I can honestly say I loved.
You mean Walmart, Cal?
Walmart.
Yeah,
sorry. Yeah. Walmart. Yeah, that's the only part of the game I actually enjoyed. That's it. And not because of the spectacle, because it actually looked. The spectacle was great too, but I mean, it was different than everything up to that point. Very different. They obviously put some thought into the different dresses and everything, and the way you could go, replayability, quote unquote, to go back and see the different scenes and different dresses for the different ladies. I don't know. Like you can definitely tell they put a lot of love into that part, but a couple of the chapters leading up to that were just well, we don't really have anything to do here, so we'll just find kids. Go
Yeah,
find kids.
the whole game, that's why the main crux of my video was, as the title says, like, making this game Midgar only, it just doesn't make sense, because it would have made sense if the whole game was good, but it has extreme padding for a start, and two, the whole game feels like they made that Midgar decision. At some point they were like, oh, we've got like 15 hours of content here. Let's just make it Midgar only. We can find another 15.
Money.
And then they got to 20 hours and were like, fuck, we don't have anything. We're out. What the hell are we going to do? And so like, it just seemed like it made a huge problem, because it's like, yeah, fair enough. You know, okay, you've got like the arena, like the battle arena, where you can go in and you can do random battle challenges, and there are random fetch quests, which are in other JRPGs and lots of other RPGs in general. But this Final Fantasy VII Remake doesn't exist in a vacuum, because we know there is more story. It's fine for like a Ubisoft open world RPG to put in 1 million fetch quests, because that's the game. But we know Final Fantasy VII Remake doesn't end here. We know that there's more story that they could have done, but they chose instead to make us do crappy random fetch quests. Like, take out 10 hours worth of the side content in Final Fantasy VII Remake and let us get to the Golden Saucer, which would have been a great place to end, because at least then you could have had continuous endgame content the Golden Saucer.
There also would have been some good emotional payoff there, because it actually has... There's some bits of story laid in the remake, and these are some good elements that I actually like. They did a really good job with Jessie, especially. They mentioned that she was an actress in the Gold Saucer, so they could have used the Gold Saucer as a place to reminisce on everything that has like happened up to this point in the story, and just talk about like missing her, and where did they go from here, and what's the... But if I know Nomura, he's just going to pull friendship magic out of his ass and bring them all back from the dead.
Even though that they specifically didn't show Jessie. I mean, I guess, do we have to say spoilers here? But
this whole section's a spoiler. It's a given.
Yeah, so like at the end, they specifically didn't show Jessie, like, you know, being back alive, but they showed, what's his name? I don't know, unnamed Star Wars reference one. You know, they showed him being awoken again, and it's like, okay, so he's not dead. I'm like, but he was the least interest. Why out of the three of
Charlie
them
Sheen?
you
didn't like Charlie
Sheen?
Bring that guy back.
It's literally Charlie Sheen.
And so like, so you give Jessie more character development. She's the best part of that game, like by far. And like, but I know in part 2 you're going to get to the Golden Saucer, and she's just going to be there. She'll have, I'm calling it now, she will have lost her memory. She went back to the last place she remembered being, an actor in the Golden Saucer.
She'll be the princess on the stage during the play section.
Going to happen.
I didn't even think about that.
She's going to be there. She had amnesia. She turns back up at the Golden Saucer. We don't know how she lived. It's going to happen, because that's just what Nomura does.
I hope not, because if Jesse's in the next one, that means I have to play it. Because that's literally the only character that I liked in the entire game.
Nomura and the other crew basically admitted that they added these extra elements to the story just to create discussion. Like, and this is the problem. Nomura has the anime approach to storytelling, where you make something as complicated as possible just to get the fans riled up. And
but like, I thought it was like, when has introducing time travel to anything made things good?
Doctor Who.
There was something established beforehand that didn't have time travel. No, but so that would be like going back to a Chrono Trigger that didn't have time travel and then adding it afterwards. Like,
so
when it's like taking something existing and then being like, let's add time travel, that's never been good.
Final Fantasy 13 too.
Hey, Final Fantasy 13 2 is actually a good game.
I love that game.
It's so much better than...
It's the best of the three.
Yeah.
Agreed.
It's still nonsense, though.
It's because of the time travel.
Also, the Nomura ghosts, like the fate dementors in Final Fantasy VII Remake, that annoys me more than anything, because when I think about like the core narrative of the game, it's all centered around fate ghosts. Like they are the one behind basically every major decision, and they're also what you eventually fight to overcome. They're the end boss. They're the thing you defeat. They're the thing you're fighting against in a theoretical sense for the whole game. So, like, why do I want Final Fantasy VII to now be about fate ghosts that
But they've
never
said
existed before?
again. They've also said the story isn't going to change that much. So it
Well,
sounds to
now-
me like they're just
Well,
adding
how,
crap
though?
just for the
I
sake of it.
don't know that I agree with that though, because if there's one part, the end is an end. But if there's one thing that I do appreciate out of it, it's the final line that you see. Like, what is it? Like, let the unknown journey begin. I think is how the whole
Yeah.
thing pans out.
They're making
killing-
that up as they go. They're making the game up to go
Of
along.
course they do, but killing the three representations of them through time as the ghosts or whatever, and then putting that up is basically saying to me, well, this is the part of Final Fantasy VII you recognize. The rest of it is going to be whatever the hell we want it to be. We're going to drop.
Well, I'm not sure if you
everything
know
else.
this, Kel, but they've actually come out and said the story is not going to change that much
I don't know
after
that I
the
agree with
fact.
that.
So
I don't think I
when did
believe
they
them.
say that?
I've never seen
I
that.
don't remember reading
this
that.
was an interview a couple of months ago. Obviously, I don't have the link on me right now, but I can absolutely send it to you.
Find it for me, because this is something I interviewed Yoshinori Kitase when he came to Australia before COVID, before the release. And the funny thing was that in the interview, I asked him if there was going to be more extended universe inclusion in it. I said, you know, are you going to bring more of that extended universe stuff into this remake? And he actually basically said no to start off, because it was important for people who hadn't played the original to experience the original story. And after I played the game, I was like, that quote makes no sense,
Yeah.
because this story is completely different. This story now revolves around fate ghosts. This is
They
not
want
the
the best
story.
of both worlds. They want to appeal to the old, but the new. They want reality, and it's just like 15 all over again. They want the best of both worlds, and you can't have your
Yeah, they
cake and
want
eat it.
everything.
And
Yep.
I'll
Even
ask
the
one more
combat.
question before we move on to the next subject. What's your hope for the next game? I'll let you go first, Jay. What do you want out of Final Fantasy VII
Look,
2?
I'm obviously. I mean, obviously there are realistic wants and there are non-realistic wants. Non-realistic would be like change the battle system completely, just go full action or full turn-based, and put some, you know, make it less about spectacle. About when you open the ATB menu, everything slows down around you. I don't give a fuck. Make me not have to pause the game to select moves over and over again.
So you basically want Tails.
No, what's unrealistic? They're not going to change the battle system that much, I don't think. They'll make a few changes. There'll be some more variety because there'll be more characters introduced. But realistic wants, I want them to not stretch out a tiny piece of the game to be a full game. Let's just go all the way up to the end of Disc 1 for this next part, at the very least. Let's get to Sephiroth's stabbing errors being the end. That's a logical end point.
Spoilers.
And that would be like at minimum. Well, I mean, yeah.
No, I'm joking. Don't worry.
that would be a logical endpoint. That should have been the logical endpoint for a part 1, really. But you know, I want them to at least do a sizable amount of the game. They're gonna make changes. I am almost 100% sure that Yuffie will be in this next one, and there's going to be a whole thing with her, like you're going to be going to like Wutai, and there'll be like a whole Wutai war, and that's where you meet her instead of just finding her in a random forest, and there's going to be like an extra 10 hours worth of Yuffie content. But I don't want it to just like end in the Golden Saucer, because you just need to hurry the hell up and get on with this. I don't want to be playing Final Fantasy VII Remake parts for the next 30 years.
I think that that's probably where they are going to do it, because I think a lot of people don't actually realize just how short Disc 2 and 3 are. Like, Disc 2 and 3 are easily Disc 1. And a lot of the locations are reused in Disc 2 and 3, except for the Northern Crater, which is the only major addition to that segment. A lot of it is going back to places that you've already been before. And then you've got the final dungeon, which is basically and side quests, which is what Disc 3 is. And my biggest fear is that it's going to be linear through. Like, I fear you're not going to be able to return to Medial after you head to the Northern Crater or something like that. It's going to be just, you have to go down this path, and you won't have any option to change from it unless you change the chapter.
Well, see, yeah, that's the problem with splitting it into multiple games. How do you make an open world with a continuous open world? You know, it was an overworld in the original, but how could you possibly make an open world that's split into multiple games that are years apart?
The game would be
you can't just make like
gigabytes.
half an open world, or like walk up and it would be like, sorry, you have to wait 3 years to enter this part of the map. Like, it just, how you can't do it.
Yep.
Kel, tell us, what would you like to see in Final Fantasy VII or 2?
Two simple things. One, a title that isn't stupid. If they call it Final Fantasy VII Remake 2, it's just nonsense.
You're talking about the company that came up with Infinite Undiscovery. You are not going to get a proper title.
What's wrong with Infinite Undiscovery as a title?
It makes no sense.
Neither did the game. It fit perfectly.
Yeah, exactly.
A good title is one, and just make Yuffie badass. Yuffie's my favorite character in the original game. I know I'm the only person in the world that feels that way, but
I think she has a level of depth that people don't give her credit for. I
loved her.
I actually like her whole conflict with like trying to just help her country, and there was a lot more emphasis. What is Yuffie figure?
I'm not the only person in the world that likes Yuffie.
I actually have I have Sephiroth and Aerith and Cloud figures, but I forgot to bring them out.
That wasn't planned. I was putting that in my unit behind me.
I know for a fact that Yuffie and Vincent are not going to be optional. They're going to be.
Oh yeah, they're definitely not going to be optional.
Yeah.
That was the one thing I asked Katase in the interview, and he laughed out loud in my face for even asking it. Like, you ballsy prick asking me about that. He looked over at his PR woman, and then they like spoke in Japanese to each other, and then he just laughed. And he just laughed and looked at me, and he's like, I can't talk about that yet.
It's like, yes, we are going to make this $20 million worth of content optional. It's like, no, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, that's what I said. I'm like, so obviously you've had to include lots of things. And just thinking about moving forward, there are lots of optional stuff, like characters. Vincent and Yuffie still going to be optional, and I can't talk about that.
I really hope they don't screw up Vincent. That's my one big thing. I hope they give him a good voice. Steve Blum did not do it for me. Love the man, but when I hear Steve Blum, I think Wolverine, not Vincent Valentine. So
yeah, well, see, the problem is the voice acting was decent in Final Fantasy VII Remake, but I hate the new Sephiroth voice. That was the worst casting ever. The old Sephiroth had the most badass voice and delivery. He was perfect. And then now this guy sounds like he's about, I don't know. He sounds like he's just playing some tween.
I honestly don't see the problem.
Doesn't sound good. It's not good.
How is that look on his face?
I know what they were going for. They just missed the mark. They were going for that creepy, I know more than you know type voice. But for me, it missed horrible. I didn't like.
Yeah,
I think the original
his voice and the dialogue. It sounds like he's reading a horoscope. Like, this is not Sephiroth. And also, what the fuck is with his redesign? What? I'm sorry. Okay, in all of his new time travel wisdom powers, at some point he hired some seamstress to seam tatty patterns into his coat. It's the worst redesign I've ever seen.
I feel that was more of a like.
His coat. They made his coat baggy. Now he can't even buy the right size coat, but he can get it embroidered.
Dude, they've got all those polygons to spare. They have to do something with it. It's like they're not working with 10 polygons anymore.
Sephiroth
they can actually
piss me off to no end. I was going to make an entire standalone video ranting about how much I hate the Sephiroth redesign.
I bet that would have been the most popular video you make on the channel. So, you got to the end of the video, huh? Thank you for checking out today's discussion. If you enjoyed our guests or the subjects we were talking about, please consider checking the links down below. All the information will be there. You can find us on all the social medias and all the usual places under the name No Word Count. And if you really enjoyed the conversation, please do consider checking us out on Patreon and Twitch and helping to support the channel, because that will just help us to continue bringing you more great discussions with more great people. Take care of yourselves. Stay beautiful.